But let's talk about fuel now, yeah, because we've also got something for you on that to paint a picture of what the fuel situation is currently.
Well, we have Mohammed Abdul Kudus, who is PRO for the National Petroleum Authority. Mr. Kudus, a very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you so much for joining us. So we've heard different accounts of what we expect in the next pricing window when it comes to petrol, kerosene, diesel, among others. But let's start with kerosene. That has been in the mix. Do we have a shortage or not?
Thank you for having me. But let me clarify. Which of the kerosene are we talking about? We have the one that aviation is used, and then we have the one that generally we use probably.
So we're talking about both, because aviation fuel has come into the picture, but we're also talking about ordinary people who use kerosene for their daily activities. We have stories where some filling stations, for example, say that for about a month, they've not had deliveries of kerosene until about recently. So what is the situation? We've heard from the NPA talking about the situation in TOR, but where exactly do we lie currently? Is there a shortage, or is it just a failure in the delivery chain?
Certainly, shortage of any of our petroleum products out there at all. So like you asserted, it is more of a distribution and supply effect. Kerosene that are generally used have stock capacity to last us of a minimum of 77 weeks. That's more than 1 year.
A minimum of what? Just to clarify, did you say a minimum of 77 weeks?
77 weeks. So we have more than enough stock out there to meet the consumption needs of the public. And then for aviation, we have equally more than enough in stock. We currently are having around 6 weeks supply capacity. And so there's no shortage of either of the kerosene at all.
So Mr. Kudus, Bernard here, what is causing that gap, if I may say, in the delivery process?
Okay, so for the kerosene that is supplied for the general public, a greater extent it has to do with the decommissioning of a lot of the pumps. Because most people have actually moved on from the use of kerosene to other forms of fuel. And so if you were an attendant or a supplier who sells that and don't get the required patronage, there's a tendency to want to close your pump down. And so that, to that extent, has actually taken off some of the supply points out of the system. And so you probably would not be able to get regularly at as easy as it would have been for you to be able to supply yourself or get yourself satisfied of that particular supply of the product. And so probably that largely is what is accounting for the seeming shortage of it. But the product is stock.
Mr. Kudus, you lace this with some probability. You say probably that could be the cause. Are there other extraneous factors that could be causing what we are seeing? Because we must be able to identify exactly what the problem is so we stem the tide of it. Because if we have such a store of kerosene and there are shortages in the system, you know the impact of that. So have you been able to identify the precise problem?
Oh, okay, so the identification of the problem I have not, or we have not. But like I said, because we have to speak from the supply point, the storage capacity, what is in stock, that is what we are comfortably and are able to speak with much confidence. And like I said, I just wanted to give the assurance that what is in our pump or in our tank is enough to really meet the needs of the public for at least 77 weeks. So we are able to speak confidently from the supply point because that is what we're supposed to do. We have a planning department in the authority that is responsible for ensuring regular supply of this particular product. So if we are to speak, we are able to speak much more with confidence on the availability or otherwise of the product. The distribution of it, because it has other players that are involved whose activities are not necessarily controlled by us. Like I said, it is a marketing a decision to make. If I have a product I'm selling and people are not buying, I probably can want to shift to another leg of a product that I probably would be able to get a lot more customers to buy to buy that. And so, if you push me to speak with confidence and with a certain degree of certainty, I should be able to speak more at the stock levels than the availability of it at various places for the public to be able to actually go and buy.
Wait. So just to clarify, you're able to speak better on the availability rather than distribution, because
Absolutely.
These are two matters you brought up. Availability, one, it is available, but in terms of its distribution, circulation, that is where the problem lies.
Yeah.
Right. So from where you sit as the MPA, before Bernice also comes in with some thoughts, can you give any guarantees to all those people who use kerosene in their daily activities? Can you give any guarantees that this situation is going to be remedied so that, with your engagement with the distributors, people would not have to struggle too much to get kerosene?
And so, like I said, probably out of the discussion we are having, it brings to fore again a certain demand of the product. And then the OMCs who largely do this distribution want to look at the previous decision of decommissioning some of their pumps, so that if there is a guaranteed market, you are assured that the people out there, the OMCs, would want to make the product available and sell it as regular as possible. Like I said, it's pure issues of the market determining it. So if now the demand is coming up, because frankly, it came to us as a surprise when the discussion around a possible shortage came about, because from our end and what we see and what we have, we know that there's no any cause for alarm at all with regards to its availability. So now if the discussion is going to be around the distribution of it so that the public can have access to it, then I think that that's going to be another conversation that could arouse the interest of the OMCs to really want to look at it again. But like I said, at our end and from where we stand and what we are supposed to do, we can talk more of the availability of the product rather than the end user and how the access should actually be done.
Right. At least you've given us some clarity on the availability and distributory factors as well. But is it correct to expect, and some industry watchers have put this out there, that kerosene prices are going to see another uptick of just about 1 cedi? Now, if we have such a vast store of kerosene, why are we seeing price hikes? Reminiscent of what we're seeing with other fuel products like petrol and diesel.
Okay, so forgive me, I probably would need to take a certain briefing from my place with regards to this, because what we publish regularly, if you are watching, is more of the kerosene that is used for aviation than what is used for domestic. So really, I don't have that information on the pricing dynamic of kerosene. I could actually get back to my people and then revert. But what we do right now has to do with kerosene for aviation and not for domestic.
Right. Well, that has given us some insight into this conversation. At least you've given us some assurance when it comes to availability. The rest has to do with distribution, and hopefully the MPA will be able to step in and do more in that respect. I don't know whether I can, and I'm going to try to do so, but just moving beyond kerosene as well. Bernice, I don't know whether you'd come in here, but even in terms of the other fuel components, when it comes to petrol and diesel, we're seeing upticks there. Recently, the transport unions pushed for a 20% increment, which has been enforced. What is the MPA doing? What should we expect as far as these other two fuel commodities are concerned?
Thank you. I think that for MPA, the Act has actually made it clear what our mandate is. We do not determine price. We regulate the pricing environment to ensure that investors get return on the investment and to ensure that the customers get value for money and are not shortchanged. And so when you ask what we can do or we will be doing in at the respect of the transport fares, I think that would probably be a little too much for the authority.
The Bank of Ghana has a desk, a newly created one,
Right.
that is supposed to determine the exchange rate when it comes to petroleum products. Are you able to confirm that for us?
Yes, I think that is one credit that I would enjoin everybody to give to the sector minister and my chief executive for having to be able to come up with that arrangement. I think we all are aware that critical elements that determine the price of fuel at the pump are mainly two things: the price of forex and then the FOB price of the product on the world market. The FOB price we do not control; it is not within our control. But the forex, to a certain degree, the Bank of Ghana can do something about it, and so, rather than having to allow the BDCs to go out chasing the dollar and to acquire sales, the Ministry of the Sector Minister and the Chief Executive of my authority actually were able to go into a certain arrangement with the Bank of Ghana that guarantees, first of all, the supply of the dollar, and two, the competitive rate of the dollar to the BDC, so that they are able to still guarantee the supply and availability of the product. So I think that it is one good thing that has actually been done, and that is how come that some other jurisdictions are seeing shortage in supply of the product, and we are not seeing same at all in Ghana.
Okay, so are these the figures you use in your current petroleum price indicator calculation?
Obviously, because in the midst of the mathematical formula, the forex actually plays a very significant role.
So you're not so you're telling us you're not using what's on the open market?
No, absolutely not. We really have a price. So, like I said, it depends on what is. There's a regular interval at which they get it from the Bank of Ghana. So the price that is gotten for them is what is factored in the mathematics, and not what is prevailing out there in the market.
Mr. Kudus, I had an interaction recently with Duncan Amwa of COPEC, and he made mention of some of these matters, that yes, you have this desk, central bank arrangement, and regulated prices, so to speak, but that is not what they are really getting. That in fact, they are paying the same market prices for the commodity, which is squeezing them, for which reason they also can't make the reductions that would immune to the benefit of the ordinary Ghanaian. That is why Bernice was asking this question. So you're clarifying that they're getting it at a fixed rate, which is lower than the market rate.
Yeah.
All right.
What we're getting from the Bank of Ghana is more competitive than what is actually out there in the open market.
But maybe a quick follow-up. Now, this regulation, which gives them a better rate, does it make it possible for the OMCs to reduce their prices by more than we're seeing now?
Okay, you see, there are so many factors and dynamics that inform the ultimate price that is put on the petroleum product. It is not just one issue. So you might have a control or a certain regulation around one factor, but if the other factor is actually out there behaving uncontrollably, then it makes it difficult for us to ultimately see the benefit of some of the arrangements. So take, for example, the price of the product in the world market. First of all, it is not seeing a certain a reduction or probably a stability. It is regularly going up out there. And so one leg is controlled and the other leg is moving upward, then the benefit that ordinarily we should have enjoyed would not actually be coming at all. And another leg that probably we're not talking so much of has nothing to do with the cost of freight, which used not to be, if you want, a major determinant. But the cost of freight is now going up so significantly. And I think that the bulk oil distributors have equally raised it so seriously. And so the dynamic is not as simple as it is that you probably had a certain regime that allows you to get the forex at a competitive rate. Then automatically you should be seeing a corresponding effect of it in the price at the pump. But like I said, because there are other factors that adds up to the determination, when those factors are also going up and not being static or reducing, then the benefit that ordinarily we should be seeing would not actually be seen at all.
Mr. Kudus, just hold for us because we have a key industry player also joining the conversation. Duncan Amwa, Executive Director of COPEC. Duncan, a very good morning to you. I'm sure you've been listening and you've heard what Mr. Kudus has been saying, especially in relation to the exchange rate and how things have been made easier for you. We had this discussion the other day. Do you have any questions for Mr. Kudus on that beat? Because he says they're giving you an exchange rate which is better than the market rate. And so maybe you should be doing better when it comes to the OMCs. Your take?
Indeed. Kudus is correct when he talks of the forex interventions that have been put in to mitigate the depreciation of the local currency. So he's spot on. The only challenge that some of the BDCs continue to have is that they probably can't get what they want. So for those who are lucky, they get 50%, some get 30%, some get 20%. It means that there's still a little gap. But then again, let me reiterate, the arrangement is far better than none. Because if they had no such arrangement, they would have to source for 100% of their dollar needs from the open market. So there's something being done, and I'm sure that is what probably might be mitigating the harsher reality at the pump than what we have seen. Although, admittedly, some of the numbers we are also seeing at the pump seem to be quite too high, and we think some of them should do well to reverse a bit. But that notwithstanding, there's been some interventions, and we must put that on record.
So the latest exchange rate, how long has it been? I mean, for this window, how long have you had a stable exchange rate without any fluctuations? Just to confirm from what you know, Mr. Amwa.
You are looking at about 2 windows now.
Which is for how long?
You're dealing with the first window, May. Second window, May has just started. But I know of the second window, March, also haven't had some forex advance to players. And so it's been on for a bit. How long this will carry on, we do not know. But clearly, like I did indicate, it's a positive move by the Bank of Ghana. Would encourage that they do a little more in order to be able to meet that 20% import cover value that the oil importers would require. But like I indicated, it's been something quite positive, except, like I said, the value advanced to each player varies. While some get 50, others might get 20. You might not be able to get all the dollar need from the central bank, but at least there's something being advanced, and that is also mitigating the depreciating cedi from the levels we saw earlier. David.
All right, Mr. Amwa, just to find out from you, we've had reports of shortage of petroleum products on the market. What have you picked up on your own?
In order not to create panic we rather choose not to communicate as forcefully. But truth is that there's been some disruptions in the market following from some maintenance that had to be undertaken at the CBM. Laycans had been planned. Unfortunately, vessels were not able, or cargo vessels were not able to discharge into the country. What was latest yesterday was that the CBM was left idle the whole day because, as it were, there's diesel pressure in the system. So we're rather waiting to discharge a diesel vessel, which probably had to undergo some documentation throughout the whole day. So petrol was also left from being discharged. What we would like to send across to the NPA is to ensure that we do not find a solution to diesel shortage only to create petrol shortage also, because we are refusing to discharge them altogether. But like I indicated, it might take the end of this week to get the system back to normal. But as it stands, there are quite a good number of stations you would visit and not be able to get the product simply because we've not been able to discharge or supply enough across the country. But as it were, there's no need to panic at all. It is not something that cannot be handled. There are delays in the discharge process that I can confirm, and that is probably also leading to the delays in supply to the outlets. But those are quite a few of the stations that have those disruptions. Others do have fuel, both petrol and diesel, although there's a lot of pressure, like I've indicated, on diesel currently. We would implore the NPA to ensure the Laycan is not left idle like they left it yesterday, the whole day without discharging even one cargo. When that happens, you'll be putting pressure also on petrol, and it won't be surprising if in the subsequent days you also get a bit of a challenge with some outlets also failing to have petrol at the various pumps. But diesel is what is in contention currently.
We appreciate your time here, Mr. Amwa is Executive Secretary of KULPEC. And Benjamin, you want to wrap up with Mr. Kudus?
No, I guess we've settled the matters. Only time will tell how these fluctuations affect prices moving on. But Mr. Kudus, thank you for joining the conversation as well.
If
Mohammed?
I could make a last word on the, the availability of the product.
Sure, go ahead.
Yes, so Duncan rightly counted the challenges. You know, the level of the tea, the behavior of the tea sometimes determine whether or not a vessel can actually discharge. And there was also a disturbance around the charging point that disrupted the supply processes that we planned at the MPA. But I can guarantee and assure the public that we have much more enough storage available for the public to consume. There's a certain disruption in supply of the product at some, either the OMC or maybe the service stations of the OMC. And it is not because the product is not available or there's a shortage of the supply of the product, but one, when it comes to do with the OMC, a lot of them have a certain relationship with the BDCs that they deal with. And currently, because of the knock-off effect of the supply side of Russia, there is a certain shortage of the product in the system, particularly diesel. And so when an OMC who has a relationship with a certain BDC is not able to supply it with the product, it could run shortage and not have fuel to dispense at this station. But that doesn't mean that the system, as in the country in totality, is in short supply of the product.
Okay.
Absolutely not at all.
Okay, so would
for
we...
the country, we have enough supply. It's just that some of the OMCs have their own challenges and certain dynamics that is affecting their ability to get the product to the public.
You've said, you've given us reasons why a vessel carrying fuel may not be allowed to discharge, but will that happen today for the vessels that Mr. Amwa talked about? Are we going to
so
see...
like I said, the water level, the character and behavior of the water determined. And these are not things that ordinarily the human being control. And
Okay,
so
I appreciate that, sir. I'm just wondering, it's 8:31 already. Have you had any indication that the weather will be favorable today, or the sea level will be favorable?
Okay, so as at this morning, we've not had any information that there's going to be a certain potential distraction. But that notwithstanding, I still want to emphasize that we have enough stock level for all of our products in the country for the various users to really get to hold of and be able to use it for their respective activities.
Mr. Kudus, we're grateful for your time, and we'll get back to you should there be any further developments on this matter. Mohammed Abdul Kudus, PRO of the NPA. But Bernice, we have a lot more in terms of the increasing fuel prices.
Yes.
What has the trajectory been like?
Okie dokie. So this is a pictorial representation of what we've been seeing since January this year to May. Okay, so it's in Ghana cedis. The pinkish one represents petrol, and then we have diesel there. So in January 2022, petrol was selling at 6.7 Ghana cedis per litre. Yeah,
Right.
and then diesel was 6.7. So there was
some parity
Yeah,
there.
they were at par. But fast forward to May 2022, we've seen an increase for petrol. We are now buying it at 9.85 cedis per litre. And then for diesel, it's 11.95 cedis per litre. As you heard Mr. Amwa indicate, there appears to be a bit of a shortage of diesel on the market. And usually, when that happens, people...
There's a bit of a surge.
Yes, there's a bit of a surge, and it usually happens at the pumps, when these various companies decide to do this. But we've got more to share with you with regards
and see
to...
that 11.95 there, of course, very reflective of what we saw by the Ghana Statistical Service, the inflationary rate. So that is just about 91%, almost 100% increment on the figure.
Yeah,
right
so we'll move to the next one.
Okay, so there we go.
All right, so here's what we've done for you. There's been a lot of discussion about the impact of the Russian war, on petroleum products across the world. And usually, even for our leaders, when we raise this issue, they want to paint a picture of what's happening in West Africa and even...
Exactly.
So what we've done...
So what is the reality?
Yeah, so what we've done is to select other African countries and show you what's happening for them also with regards to petrol and diesel. And we've converted their various currencies and put it into Ghana cedi, so it's easier for you to relate. So let's start with Ghana. So Ghana tops it.
On both.
Ghana tops it on
we take
petrol
it,
and
both
fuel.
for petrol and diesel.
So and diesel, thank you. 10.05 for petrol, 11.13 for diesel. Come to South Africa, second highest, 9.94. For petrol, 11.1 for diesel. In Ivory Coast, our neighbors, 8.39 for petrol and 7.42 for diesel. Burkina Faso, also our neighbors, 7.42 for petrol and 6.58 for diesel. But what's happening here with these two countries, Ivory Coast and Burkina Faso?
Interesting.
They have the petrol price higher than the diesel price. But for South Africa and Ghana, it's the flip.
It's also interesting, just to stay a bit on Burkina Faso.
Yeah.
When you look at their diesel price, it is actually reflective of what we had, even slightly lower than what we had in January.
Yeah. Interesting.
And ours has gone up by close to 100%.
Well, see what's happening in Togo. They don't seem to have... It's
not too much of a fluctuation.
Not too much of a difference between petrol and diesel. 7.18 for petrol, 7.3 for diesel. But watch Nigeria.
It's an interesting case.
Watch
and of course,
Nigeria.
it has to do with their own internal production dynamics.
So, same thing that came, when I saw that, I said, look, this has got a lot to do with Nigeria being able to produce and refine its own fuel. So, look at petrol. 3.36 Ghana cedi per litre.
I could do with that.
I know.
I really could do with the price like that.
And I'm sure a lot of Ghanaians are saying, whoa, how we wish it was our story here. And someone says even if it was 7 cedis, it would be okay than the 10.05. But diesel again, 9.77 even for Nigeria.
Right.
So there appears to be some problem with the diesel issue.
But what is interesting, if we could just go back to that slide, you look at an oil-producing country like Nigeria. Of course, Russia has its own dynamics, especially when it comes to diesel and the impact. They are selling at 9.77. Interestingly, non-oil producing countries like Togo, like Burkina Faso, have lower diesel prices. Even the Ivory Coast has a lower diesel price. That makes for some interesting reading. Maybe there are some things that because we are not technical people in this area, we may not be seeing. But the point is that when you look at the general trajectory, somehow Ghana is stopping on all of them, both petrol and diesel for those selected entities. I mean, South Africa, fuel products have been typically expensive in South Africa. We're higher than South Africa, and that makes for some.
And let me just say again that these are selected African countries, okay? So it's not the entire African continent that has this as the ranking. Okay, let me just put that clear. But let's move to the next slide where we further explain the situation we find ourselves in with regards to increasing fuel prices.
All right.
So for the February fare review, so this is how it translates into the transport fare confusion, okay? So we had a 15% increase for the February fare review. And for total increase this year, that's all the times we've had the transport
so February
union
15%, and the latest 20%.
So
gives
cumulatively,
you that
35%, yes. So that's what we are seeing now. And a lot of you have been complaining about how this is a stretch for your meager salaries, considering all the other expenses you have to cater for. So there's a bit more on the transport fare confusion.
But you know why it's biting even more? Because a lot of our products, or a lot of the vehicles, you remember the last time when I spoke to the Concerned Drivers Association, they were pointing to the fact that a lot of their buses operate on diesel. So with these prices and all of that, definitely we would be feeling the shock.
So quickly, in wrapping up this, factors affecting fuel prices, we have the cost of crude oil, and we have refining costs and profits, distribution, marketing and retail station costs and profits, exchange rate losses, and we've just discussed that with Duncan and Mr. Kudus, taxes, levies and margin. This, that's
a huge
one. We heard from the TUC asking government to try and scrap the taxes, but well, government says, look, if we do so, we're going to lose some 4 billion cedis annually, and we don't want to do that. So that'll be it for our conversation on fuel and how it translates into your transport fares and all the confusion about it. Away from that, today we're taking a look at a suggestion by the Ministry of Education. Very interesting one. Here's what our minister says. Let's affiliate grade C schools to grade A schools. That's the senior high level. He thinks that this will help grade C schools imbibe the principles of grade A schools so that they'll be able to, perform better, help the students better. I don't know what you think of that, but we'll be having this conversation. Professor George Odro, former Pro-Vice Chancellor of the UCC, will be joining us. We've got Peter Anti, Executive Director, Institute for Education Studies, and Divine Ekpe, Research Fellow, Africa Education Watch. You don't want to miss this conversation. Do stay with us.